Hi, I'm Reed Smith, co-founder of Centered Recovery Programs. We're a mindfulness addiction treatment center that teaches our clients an understanding of mindfulness that allows for them to discover their sobriety effortlessly. And I wanted to share with you today and speak with you about mindfulness. I'm sure you've heard of it. You may know a lot or a little about it. If you don't know about it, that's okay. We're going to go into it today. In fact, I looked on Google and came up with a couple of definitions, and then also saw several questions that were also suggested, like what exactly is mindfulness? How do I practice mindfulness? And so I think that we could talk about the definitions and the language to describe it, but there's nothing more beneficial than having the direct experience. And so what I like to do today is, instead of trying to become mindful or practice mindfulness, I think this limited time would be better spent exploring possibly what prevents us from being mindful in the moment. Because all of us have experienced mindfulness moments that we feel connected. We feel a sense of security at home. And probably the most common place that people are able to enter this or imagine it would be with domesticated animals. The canine is man's best friend, and I certainly agree. I have several of them and spend a lot of time with them. And when I do, I have complete permission to be myself. I don't have to pretend. I don't have additional thinking in my head concerned about how I appear. I'm not a great dancer, but I'll dance in front of my dogs. I'm certainly not a great singer, but I don't mind singing in front of my animals. And so that freedom comes from us living without thinking, producing insecurity. So we're not concerned where we're being seen from. And that allows us to show up authentically and spontaneously and really just express who we are. And this same freedom is available to us outside of our relationship to our animals who are unable to communicate with English language. One thing that I commonly hear is the improvement in relationships, whether it be with coworkers or at home, or just in general, the people that you interact with, that the feedback has been overwhelming that the quality of those experiences drastically increases when they begin to give other people permission to be themselves when they're with them. So imagine you were paying to go see an artist, and as he's painting his masterpiece on the canvas, no one in the audience is screaming, stop that, paint it this way, change the color. They allow the artist to completely finish his work of art on that canvas before we were able to look at it. And we need to give the people that we're interacting with, including our coworkers, the same permission and act as if they have a canvas over their head, and that the words that they're sharing with us are just trying to provide the brushstrokes illustrating what they're trying to communicate, and make sure they completely get done with what they're doing before we're able to comment. Because until we have all of the information and that canvas is complete, then we can't judge it. We don't have all the evidence. And by being open and allowing people to be honest with us in this type of way to really express themselves, allows them to be authentic. And in that, you may have permission to be authentic back. One thing that is very practical that we can do is to experience more moments of mindfulness and connection with others is to adopt maybe a different orientation to being with another person. Ordinarily, when we're interacting, there's a lot of interpretation in what's being heard, and that is your own voice. So the body, the actual ear, does the hearing, and then it seems there's this immediate analytical movement within that interprets and analyzes, judges that information. And sadly, that analytical movement prevents you from listening because what you're hearing is yourself and that instead of what's being communicated by the other person. And so one great way to really test this in your own experience is next time you're with someone that you trust and feel safe with is to really begin to be wide open to listening without that listener, which is the analytical movement present, and just being available, just bearing witness to what's being shared. And what you might find is each situation offers up its own solution. In the moment, the right thing to say just comes up when the space is there for it to happen. And people go, well, how can I be with another person and not be thinking about it? It's pretty easy. You just notice that you're thinking about it. And when we notice that we're thinking about what's being shared, then the energy moves away from producing that activity and it relaxes and we're able to hear again. And you just do this over and over, and it's developing this muscle of listening very deeply to what another human being is sharing. And this way of being with someone allows for what we would say mindfulness because it gives the other person, it allows them to really be heard. And that is healing in and of itself. If we're really honest and ask ourselves the question, what am I most mindful about? The content may change, but where it gets expressed is probably in the activity of thinking itself. So it seems to make it seems to me, it makes a lot of sense to investigate and understand the thinking process. Because thinking is just like breathing. It's just happening. It's just going on. If we were really in a position to control it and we were the ones responsible for doing it, I think we would be better at it by now. We would say, well, that year was bad. I'm done with that. I'm not thinking about that anymore. So we don't always necessarily get to choose our thoughts, but we don't have to. I think what might be more important is to see that they're just happening. They're always just happening. And just like the body's always breathing, you only need to notice that the body is breathing itself when you can't breathe. When you need to catch your breath, you notice that the body's breathing. You don't notice that you're smelling all of the time, unless you smell something like hopefully an apple pie or something. You don't notice your clothes on your body unless maybe a tag didn't get cut off or something. And you don't notice the fact that you're even hearing unless you might be in a restaurant with lots of noise and then you hear your name and then suddenly you can attend to that. But you had been hearing the whole time, just all of the background. Thinking is also just happening in the background. And occasionally, when our thinking moves in an unhealthy way, this physical body is designed to wake us up to that unhealthy thinking so that we can see that the error has been innocently made up here in the activity of thinking rather than imagining that our problems are out there in the world. So anytime you feel agitated, you feel friction in the body, you feel that contraction, we need to be using our bodies to gauge the quality of the functioning of our mind. And up to now, I think we've been using our minds to tell us what's going on in our bodies, and we've just simply had it backwards. So I encourage you, the next time you begin to feel a particular disturbance, to right with your opposite hand, walk outside and take some deep breaths. And what happens is it's not that activity that makes you feel better, but it's that activity that attention goes into and moves away from this chatter that caused all of this disturbance in the first place. And so when that thinking moves, you're going to have a better feeling. I think one benefit of mindfulness is that it really allows us to have a shift in perspective. We almost metaphorically climb this tree to where we're all in this maze and we're always hitting dead ends and looking for the way to live life. And I think being mindful just allows us to really have a higher perspective to where we see some of those dead ends that we previously weren't available to us until we walked up to it. And it allows us to see further, and just we get lost less often. And then when we do get lost, we realize that we have this internal GPS self-correcting feedback loop of the body to bring us back to the now. Because so often our troubles aren't in present evidence, but rather they're imagined. As we sit here in this room and I imagine my yesterdays or imagine my tomorrows, while all the while I'm just here now. And so mindfulness is really just having more space and availability for now to be here. And it's here when we're not busy creating our yesterdays and our tomorrows. So when it comes to the topic of mindfulness, I do think mindfulness is right for everybody. Maybe not everybody is right, for mindfulness, but I think everybody finds it in their own way, whether it's in nature, spending time with the dogs, the children, wherever you find those moments that you feel connected and you enjoy life as it is, without wanting it to be any different. This is mindfulness, and it's available to everyone. Thank you for your time. Once again, I'm Reed Smith, and I invite you to the Wise Summit Mindfulness Expo, where I'll be joining you to answer your questions. Look forward to seeing you then.